All right, my laptop has been crashed and I had to restart everything. Anyways, progress has been saved. We can continue working on it. And we were on 8th page, ninth page, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, changing your context can help if you are often find your new ideas. The journal itself often dodges them. But you may not have to go far for this, and if you travel space of work on partly knowledges, and this is crazy because if you're working explore, you'll have more ideas if you explore a lot of different topics, partly because it gives what that is. But don't divide your attention evenly because many topics though, or you spread yourself too thin if you only between don't divide your attention evenly between many topics though you'll spread yourself too thin. If you want to distribute it according to something more like a power law, be professionally curious about a few topics and idly curious about many more. Curiosity and originality are closely related. Curiosity feeds originality. Curiosity feeds originality by giving it new things to work on. But the relationship is closer than that. Curiosity is itself a kind of originality. It's roughly two questions. That originality is two answers. Okay. Since questions are the best that are components of answers, curiosity at its best is a creative force. Having new ideas is a strange game because this is important. Let's just cut it through. Alright. Having new ideas is a strange game because it usually consists of seeing things that were under your nose. Once you seen a new idea, it tends to seem obvious. Or why don't no one think of this before? Yeah, this is strange. When an idea seems simultaneously novel and obvious, it's probably a good one. Saying something obvious sounds easy, but yet empirically having new ideas is hard. What's the source of this apparent contradiction? Is that seeing a new idea usually requires you to change the way you look at the world. We see a world through modules that help and constrain us. When you fix a broken model, new ideas become obvious. But nothing and fixing a broken model is hard. Noticing and fixing a broken model is hard. That's how new ideas can be both obvious yet hard to discover, and they are easy to see after you do something hard. One way to discover broken models is this, to be stricter than other people. Broken models of the world leave trail of clues where they bash against reality. Most people don't want to see these clues. It would be an understatement to say that they are attached to their current model. It's what they're thinking, so they tend to ignore the trail of clues that left by its breakage. However conspicuous it may seem to retrospect. This is so true. To find new ideas, you have to seize the signs of breakage instead of looking away. That's what Einstein did. He was able to see the wild implications of Maxwell's equations, not so much because he was looking for new ideas, as because he was stricter. The other thing you need is willingness to break rules. Paradoxical as it sounds, If you want to fix your model of the world, it helps to be the sort of person who's comfortable breaking news from the points of view of old model, which everyone including you initially shares. The new model usually breaks the least implicit rules. If you understand the degree of rule breaking required, because new ideas seem much more conservative once they succeed. They seem preferably reasonable once you are using the new model of the world they brought with them. But they didn't at that time. At the time, it took the greatest part of the century for the holocentric model to generally get accepted, even among the astronomers, because it felt so wrong. Indeed, if you think about it, a good new idea has to seem bad to most people. Someone would have already explored it, or someone would have already explored it. So, what you're looking for is ideas that seem crazy but right kind of crazy. How do you recognize this? You can't with certainty. Often, ideas that seem bad are bad, but ideas that are right kind of crazy tend to be exciting, they are rich in implications, whereas ideas that are merely bad tend to be depressing. This is an important statement. I like this. Oh no. There are two ways to be comfortable breaking rules: enjoy breaking them or to be indifferent to them. I call these two cases being aggressively, passively, independent minded. Aggressively independent minded are not ordinary ones. Rules don't merely fail to stop them. Breaking rules gives them additional energy for the sort of person delight the sheer or audacity of a project sometimes applies enough activation energy to get it started. Holy shit. That's perfect. The other way to break rules is not care about them, perhaps even to know they exist. This is why novices and outsiders often make new discoveries. Their ignorance of the fields assumptions acts as a source of temporary, passive, independent mindedness. As spies seem to have a kind of immunity to conventional beliefs, several I know say that this helps in new ideas. Okay. Strictness plus rule breaking sounds like a strange combination. In popular culture, they are opposed. But popular culture has broken model of its respect. It implicitly assumes that the issues are trivial ones and the trivial ones matter strictness. In the trivial matter strictness, rule breaking are opposed. But in questions that really matter, only rule breakers can be truly strict. An overlooked idea often doesn't lose till the semifinals. You do see it subconsciously, but then another part of you subconscious shoots it down because it would be too weird, too risky, too much work, too controversial. This suggestion suggests an exciting possibility. If you could turn off such filters, you could see more new ideas. One way to do that is ask what would be good ideas for someone else to explore. Then your subconscious won't shoot them to protect you. That's also a good advice. You could also discover overlooked ideas by working in a different direction, by starting from once obscuring them. Every cherished but mistaken principle is surrounded by a dead zone of valuable ideas that are unexplored because they contradict it. Surrounded by a dead zone of valuable ideas. Okay, principles. Contradicting the principles is important. That can be described either literally or metaphorically as a religion will have valuable unexplored ideas in its shadow. What are people in the kinds of to attach to some principle that naturally that comes. People show much more originality in solving problems than in deciding which problems to solve. Even the smartest can be surprisingly conservative when deciding what to work on. People who would never dream of being fashionable in any other way get sucked into working on fashionable problems. One reason people are more conservative when choosing problems than solutions is that problems are bigger bets. A problem could occupy you for years, while exploring the solution might only take few days. Even so, I think most people are too conservative. They are not merely responding to the risk, but to fashion as well. Unfashionable problems are undervalued. One of the most interesting kinds of unfashionable problem is the problem that people think has been fully explored but hasn't. Great problem often takes something that already exists, shows its latent potential. Durer what both did this. So if you're interested in a field that others think is tapped out, don't let their skepticism deter you. People are often wrong about this. Working on an unfashionable problem can be very pleasing. If there is no hype or hurry, opportunities or critics are both occupied elsewhere. The existing work often has an old school solidity, and there is a satisfying sense of economy in cultivating new ideas that would otherwise be wasted. But the most common type of overlooked problem is not explicitly unfashionable in the sense of being out of fashion. It just doesn't seem to matter as much as it does. How do you find these? By being self-indulgent, by letting your curiosity have its way, tuning out at least temporarily the little voice in your head that says you should be working on something important, on important problems. This is so true. If you're not working on AI these days, it's just you are so undervalued. You'll feel like you're working on something not important, right? While you're working on AI, you're building AI product, you'll feel like you're doing something important because it's so hyped up and it's so fashionable to work on AI these days, right? So I think it's true. So people who are working on AI these days are thinking themselves as real creators and feeling proud of themselves, which maybe is justified by. But people who are actually working on old-fashioned stuff or unfashionable pieces of work are actually, underrated, or nobody even recognizes them, right? There is no recognition for them, and till they get successful and make it, right? So it's not that only AI products will be earning money. Even they earn money, or even they get successful, except everybody is actually doing AI these days because of the hype and all the hurry, while people who actually build the traditional software are doing the same thing undercover. Nobody is disturbing them, right? And they keep earning money while you people build the same stuff again and again. You do need to work on important problems, but almost everyone is too conservative about what counts as one. If there is a problem that overlooked problem in your neck, but overlooked, if there is an problem important, if there is an important but overlooked problem in your neighborhood, it's probably already in your subconscious radar screen. So try asking yourself, if you were going to take a break from serious work to work on something just because it would be really interesting, what would you do? The answer is probably more important than it seems. Originality in choosing problems seems to matter even more than originality in solving them. That's what distinguishes the people who discover new fields, so whole new fields. So what might seem to be merely an initial step, deciding what to work on, in a sense is the key to whole game. Few grasp this. One of the biggest misconceptions about new ideas is about the ratio of question to answer in their composition. People think big ideas are answers, but often real insight is in the question. Part of the reason we underrate questions is the way they are looking in the schools. In schools, they tend to exist only briefly before being answers, like unstable particles. But a really good question can be much more than that. A really good question is partial discovery. How do new species arise? Is the force that makes objects fall on the earth the same as the one that keeps orbits in the planets in their orbits? By even asking such questions, you are already able to you were already in exciting novel territory. Okay, okay, okay. Let's see what we have done. First thing, work on unfashionable. You will in solitude and in the solution can be as important as it is for fashionable. Unanswered questions can be uncomfortable to carry around with you, but alright, unanswered questions can be uncomfortable to carry things to carry around with you. But the more you're carrying, the greater the chance of noticing a solution, or perhaps even more excitingly, noticing that two unanswered questions are the same. Sometimes you carry a question for a long time, long time. Great work often comes from returning to a question you first noticed in years in your childhood. Even when you can't stop thinking about, people talk a lot about this importance of keeping your youthful dreams alive, but it's just as important as keeping your youthful questions alive. This is one of the places where actual expertise differs from most of the popular picture of it. In the popular picture, experts are certain, but actually, the more puzzled you are, the better. So long as the things you're puzzled about matter, no one else understands them either. The puzzle, the things you're puzzled about matter, no one else understands them either. The more puzzled you are, the better. So long as think about what's happening at the moment. At the moment, just before a new idea is discovered, often someone with sufficient expertise is puzzled about something, which means that originality consists partly of puzzlement of confusion. You have to be comfortable enough with the world being full of puzzles that you're willing to see them, but not so comfortable that you don't want to solve them. You have to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable enough with the world being full of puzzles that you're willing to see them, but not comfortable that you don't want to solve them. Not so comfortable that you don't want to solve them. Okay, that's a good statement. I like it. I don't like these gaps though, but I will fix it later using AI. It's a great thing to be rich in unanswered questions. And this is one of those situations where the rich get richer because the best way to acquire new questions is to try answering existing ones. Questions don't just lead to answers but also more questions. It's a great thing to be rich and where rich gets richer. The best questions grow in the answering. You notice the thread protonic in the current paradigm, try pulling on it, it just gets longer and longer, so you don't require a question to be obviously big before you try to answer it. You can just really predict that. It's hard enough to even notice that way, let alone the predict how much will unravel if you pull on it. It's better to be promiscuously curious, to pull a little bit on a lot of threads and see what happens. Big things start small. The initial versions of big things were often just experiments or side projects or talks, even which grew into something bigger. So lots of small things. Being prolific is underrated. The more different things you try, the greater chance of discovering new. Understand though that trying a lot of things means trying a lot of things that don't work. You can't have good ideas without having a lot of bad ones. Though it sounds more responsible to begin by studying everything that's been done before, you learn faster and have fun by trying stuff. You'll understand previous work better when you do look at it, so lean on the side of starting, which is easier when starting means starting small. Though those two ideas fit together like a puzzle pieces. How do you get from starting small to do something great? By making successful versions. Great things are almost always made in successful versions. You start with something small, evolve, and final version is both cleverer and more ambitious than you think you could be planned. It's particularly useful to make successful versions when you are making something for people to get an initial version in the front of them quickly and then evolve it based on the response. Begin by trying to do the simplest things that could possibly work. Surprisingly often it does. And if it doesn't, this will at least get you started. Don't try to cram too much new stuff into any one version. There are names for doing this, with the first version taking too long to ship, and the second version, second system effect. But these both are merely instances of more general principle. An early version of will take something listen as a toy. It's a good sign that people do this. That means that it has everything a new idea exceeds needs except scale. That tends to be followed. The alternate to starting with a smaller or overlaying it is to plan in advance what you're going to do, and planning does usually seem more responsible choice. It sounds more organized to say we are going to do X then Y then Z. We are going to try Z and see what happens. And it's more organized, and it just doesn't work as well. And it is more organized. It just doesn't work as well. Planning per se isn't good. It's sometimes necessary, but it's necessarily evil. A response to unforgiving conditions. It's something you have to do because you're working with inflexible media, or because you need to coordinate the efforts of a lot of people. If you keep projects small and use flexible media, you don't have to plan as much. Your designs can evolve instead. Take as much risk as you can afford in an efficient market. Risk is proportionate to reward. So don't look for certainty, but for bet with a high expected value. If you're not failing occasionally, you're not probably being too conservative. You're probably being too conservative. Take as much risk as you can afford. In an efficient market, risk is proportional to reward. So don't look for certainty, but for a bet of high expected value. If you're not failing occasionally, you're probably being too conservative. Though conservatism is usually associated with the old, it's the young who tend to make this mistake. Inexperience makes them fear risk, but it's when you're young that you can afford most. Even a project that fails can be valuable. In the process of working on it, you have crossed territory of few others have seen and encountered questions few others have asked. And there are probably no better sources of questions than the ones you encounter in trying to do something slightly hard. Slightly hard. Use the advantages of youth when you have them. Advantages of age once you have those. Advantages of youth are energy, optimism, freedom. Advantages of age are knowledge, efficiency, money, power. With effort, you can acquire some of the latter when young and keep some former when old. The old also have advantage of knowing which advantages they have. The young often have them without realizing it. The biggest probably is probably time. The young have no idea how rich they are in time. The best way to turn this time into advantage is use it in slightly frivolous ways. To learn about something you don't need to know about, just out of curiosity, or just to try building something just because it would be cool, or become freakishly good at something. That slightly is more important qualification. Spend time lavishly when you are young, but don't simply waste it. There's a big difference between doing something you worry might waste of time, or doing something you know for sure will be. The former is at least a bet, and possibly the best one than you think. Okay, we are getting into the general parts. Schools, youth, and all those stuff. Maybe this is very tense. Right, so okay, that's weird. Are we still recording it? Are we still online? Yeah, we are. I don't know why this is here. Alright, how do I actually get started? Versions, right? It's about versions. So toggle Here are three. Work happens in iterations. The first one, version. Okay, let's just get back. Okay. Start working as fast as possible. Ship as fast as possible. First version might be shit, but you have to ship it anyway. If people like it, it's good. If not, you at least started working. Validate the product in the market with it. Next versions, but this version is used to validate the idea. Planning is not useful. At least don't plan long term, which will lead to restrictions set by yourself. Alright, the most subtle advantage of youth is, or more precisely of inexperience, is that you're seeing everything with fresh eyes. When your brain embraces an idea for the first time, sometimes two don't fit together perfectly. Usually the problem is with your brain, or occasionally it's with the idea. The piece of it sticks out awkwardly, jabs you when you think about it. People who are used to the idea have learned to ignore it, but you have the opportunity not to. So when you are learning about something for the first time, pay attention to the things that seem wrong or missing. You will be tempted to ignore them since there is 99% chance of the problem is with you. You may have to set aside those your misgivings temporarily to keep progressing, but don't forget about them. Experience that you're seeing everything with fresh eyes. This is a great thing. This is again going into that thing, right? Where is it? Not procrastination. This one. I hate that this thing breaks like this. Significance of knowledge you get from experiences to know what you don't have to worry about. The young don't all the things that could matter, but not their relative importance. So they worry equally about everything when they should worry much more about few things, hardly at all about the rest. But what you don't know is the half of the problem with inexperience. The other half is what you don't know that ain't so. You arrive at adulthood with your head full of nonsense, bad habits you acquired, and false things that you've been taught, and you won't be able to do great work till you clear away at least the nonsense in the way of whatever the type of work you want to do. Much of the nonsense left in your head is left there by schools. We're used to schools that we unconsciously treat going to school as identical with learning, but in fact, schools have all sorts of strange qualities that warp our ideas about learning and thinking. For example, schools induce passivity. Since you were a small child, there were always an authority in front of the class telling all of you what you had to learn and then measuring whether you did. But neither classes or tests are intrinsic to learning, they are just artifacts of way schools are usually designed. The sooner you overcome this passivity, the better. If you're still in the school trying thinking about your education as a project, your teachers are as working for you rather than vice versa. That may seem to be a stretch, but it's merely the same weird thought experiment. It's the truth economically in the best case, it's the truth intellectually as well. The best teachers don't want to be your bosses. They prefer to be if you pushed ahead using them as a source of advice rather than being pulled by them through the material. Schools also give you a misleading impression of what work is like. In schools, they tell you what the problems are, and then there is always a soluble solution, or they're always soluble with using no more than what you've been taught. So far, in real life, you have to figure out what the problems are, and you often don't know if they are solvable at all. But perhaps the worst thing schools do to you is train you to win by hacking the test. You can't do great work by doing that. You can't trick God. So stop looking for the kind of shortcut. The way to beat the system is to focus on the problems and solutions that others have overlooked, not to skim through the work itself. Don't think of yourself as dependent on some gatekeeper giving you a big break. Even if this were true, the best way to get it would be to focus on doing good work rather than chasing influential people. And don't take rejection by committees to heart. The qualities that impress admission officers and prize committees are quite different from those required to do great work. The decisions of selection communities are only meaningful to the extent they are part of the feedback loop, and very few are. People new to the field will often copy existing work. There is nothing inherently bad about it, but there is no better way to learn about how something works than by trying to reproduce it. Nor does copying necessarily make you work unoriginal. Originality is the presence of new ideas, not the absence of old ones. This is a great statement. Mm. Copy. There's a good way to copy and a bad way. If you're going to copy something, do it openly instead of furtively, or worse, still unconsciously. This is what's meant by famously misattributed phrase, great artists steal. The really dangerous kind of copying, the kind that gives copying a bad name, is the kind that's done without realizing it. Because you're nothing more than a train running on the tracks laid down by someone else. But at the other extreme, copying can be a sign of superiority rather than subordination. In many fields, where is that? It's almost inevitable that your early work will be in some sense based on other people's. Projects rarely arise in a vacuum, they are usually a reaction to the previous work. When you're starting out, you don't have any previous work. If you're using to react to something, that has to be someone else. Once you're established, you can react to your own. But while the former gets called derivative, the latter doesn't. Structurally, the two cases are more similar than they seem. Oddly enough, the very novelty of the most novel idea sometimes makes them seem at first to be more derivative than they are. The new discoveries often have to be conceived initially as variations of existing things, even by discoverers, because there isn't any conceptual vocabulary to express them. There are definitely some dangers of copying, though. One is that you will tend to copy old things that were in their day, the frontier of knowledge, but no longer are. This is important. And what you do when you do copy something, don't copy every feature of it. Some will make you ridiculous if you do. Don't copy the manner of an eminent 50-year-old professor if you're 18, for example, or the idiom of Renaissance poem hundreds of years later. Some of the features of things you admire are flaws they succeed in despite. Indeed, the features that are easiest to eliminate are the most likely to be flaws. Behaviors. Some talented people are jerks. This sometimes makes it seem to be to the inexperienced that being a jerk is a part of being talented, and it isn't. So being talented is merely how to get away with it. One of the most powerful kinds of copying is to copy something from one field to another. History of full of discoveries. Okay. Negative examples can be as inspiring as positive ones. In fact, you can sometimes learn more from things that are done badly than the things that are done well. Sometimes it only becomes clear what's needed when it's missing. If a lot of best people in your field are collected in one place, it's usually a good idea to visit for a while. It will increase your ambition, also by showing you that these people are human, increase your self-confidence. If you're earnest, you'll probably get a warmer welcome than you might expect. Most people who are very good at something are happy to talk about it, and anyone who's genuinely interested in their work It may take some effort to find people who are really good though. Doing great work has such a prestige in some places, particularly universities. There is a polite fiction that everyone is engaged in it, and that is far from true. People within universities can't say so openly, but the quality of the work being done in different departments varies immensely. Some departments have people doing great work, and others in the past, and others never have. Seek out for the best colleagues. There are a lot of projects that can be done alone. Even if you're working on the one that can be, it's good to have other people to encourage you and bounce ideas off. Colleagues don't just affect your works though, they also affect you. So work with people you want to become like, because you will. Quality is more important than quantity in colleagues. It's better to have one or two great ones than building a pretty good ones, full of pretty good ones. In fact, it's merely better but necessary, judging from the history. The degree of which great work happens in clusters suggests that one's colleagues often make the difference between doing great work or not. Quality is more important than quantity in colleagues. Or you probably don't. But it may be possible to give a more concrete answer than that. Here is an attempt. Sufficiently good colleagues offer surprising insight. They can see and do things that you can't. So if you have any handful of colleagues that are good enough to keep you on toes in this sense, you're probably over the threshold. Most of us can benefit from collaborating with colleagues, but some projects require people on a larger scale. Starting one of these is not for everyone. If you want to run a project like that, you'll have to become a manager. Managing well takes aptitudes and interest like any other kind of work. If you don't have them, there is no middle path. You must either force yourself to learn management as a second language or avoid such projects. Husband your morale. It's the basis of everything. When you're working on ambitious projects, you have to be nurtured and protected like any living organism. Morale starts when you with a view of life. You're more likely to do great work if you're an optimist, and more likely if you think yourself as a lucky than if you think yourself as a victim. Indeed, work can to some extent protect you from your problems. If you choose to work, that's pure. It's very difficult. This will serve as refuge from difficulties of everyday life, which, if this is escapism, it's very productive form of it, and one that has been used by some of the greatest minds in the history. Morale compounds via work. High morale helps you do good work, which increases your morale and helps you do even better work. But this cycle also operates in the other direction. If you are not doing good work, it can demoralize you, and make it even harder to. Since it matters so much for the cycle to be running in the right direction, it can be a good idea to switch to either easier work when you're stuck, just so you start getting something done. So if you're stuck, you should be doing this. One of the biggest mistakes ambitious previous people make is to allow setbacks. They a balloon bursting. You can inoculate yourself against explicitly considering setbacks as part of your process. Solving hard problems always involves some of the backtracking. Doing great work is the depth first search whose root node is the desire to. If you at first you don't succeed, try again isn't quite right. It should be, if at first you don't succeed, either try again or backtrack and try again. Never give up is also not quite right. Obviously, there are times when it's right choice to eject. The more precise version would be never let setbacks panic you into backtracking more than you need to. Never abandon the route mode. It's not necessarily a bad sign if work is a struggle any more than this. It's a bad sign to be out of the breath. while running. It depends on how fast you are running. So learn to distinguish between pain and bad from bad. Good pain is a sign of effort. Bad pain is a sign of damage. An audience is a critical component of morale. If you're a scholar, your audience may be your peers. In the arts, it may be your audience in the traditional sense. Either way, it doesn't need to be big. The value of the audience doesn't grow anything like linearly with its size, which is bad news if you're famous, but good news if you're just starting out, because it means that a small but dedicated audience can be enough to sustain you. A handful of people genuinely love what you're doing. That's enough. To the extent you can avoid letting intermediaries come between you and your audience in some types of work. This is inevitable, but it's liberating to escape it. That you might be better off switching than adjacent times and letting go direct. People you spend time with also have big effect on your morale. You'll find there are some people who increase your energy and others who decrease it, and effect has someone has not always. Seek out to people who increase your energy and avoid those who decrease it, though of course there is someone who you need to take care of that takes precedence. Don't marry someone who doesn't understand what you need to work or sees your work as competition for your attention. If you're ambitious, you need to work. It's almost like medical condition. So someone who won't let you work either doesn't understand you or does and does not care. Oh my god, this is such an important statement. Again, it goes into Twitter. Yeah, I am following that guy. God. Stop AI पे journalism. Oh god. Oh my god. That's better. ChatGPT is fucked up. I like this. People are actually getting mad at this thing. People usually say OpenAI sucks and get back to Gemini or something like that. But people are actually saying, okay, this is weird, but okay. Not really too much though. It's very less. about 4K views. The top one. Makes sense. I'm sure they will reduce it, but okay. Alright, people who you spend time with will also have a big effect on your morale. So it's about morale, right? It's about morale, and let's write it. Why is morale so important? Urgence of work. Morale. This is a great statement. Look at this. Look at this piece of art. People who do great work are not happier than everybody else, but they are absolutely happier than they would be if they weren't doing that thing, right? People who are smart and ambitious but don't achieve much tend to become bitter. It's okay if you want to impress other people, but choose the right people. Opinion of people is respect to the same. Fame is, which is an opinion of larger group of might or might not respect, just adds noise. The prestige of a type of work is at best a trailing indicator and sometimes completely mistaken. If you do anything well enough, you'll make it prestigious. So the question to ask about the type of work is not how much prestige it has, but how well it could be done. Competition can be effective motivator, but don't let it choose the problem for you. Don't let yourself get drawn into chasing something just because others are. In fact, don't let competitors make you do anything much more specific than work harder. Curiosity is the best guide. If curiosity is the best guide. Your curiosity never lies. It knows more than you do about what's worth paying attention to. Oh my gosh. Notice how often that word has come up. If you asked an oracle about the secret of doing great work, the oracle would reply a single word. My word would be a curiosity. Though that doesn't translate directly to an advice. It's not enough to be just curious. You can't command curiosity anyway. but you can nurture it and let it drive you. True curiosity is key to all four steps in doing great work. It will choose a field for you, get you into the front tire, cause you to notice gaps, drive you to explore them, and whole process is kind of a dance of with curiosity. Believe it or not, I try to make this essay as short as I could, but this length at least means it acts as a filter. If you made it this far, you must have been interested in doing great work. And if so, you're already further along than most might realize, because the set of people willing to want to do is small. The factors in doing great work are factors in literal mathematical sense. They are ability, interest, effort, and luck. Luck by definition, you can't do anything about it. You can ignore it, and we assume effort. If you do in fact want to do great work, the problem boils down to ability and interest. Can you find the kind of work where your ability and interest will combine to yield of explosion of new ideas? Here are the grounds for optimism. There are so many different ways to do great work, even more that are still undiscovered. Out of all those different types of work, the one you are most suited for is probably the pretty close match. Probably comically close to match. It's a question of finding it. How far to it is your ability and interest can take you. You can only answer that by trying. Many more people could try to do work, great work than do. What holds them back is combination of modesty and fear. It seems presumptuous to try to be Newton and Shakespeare. It also seems hard. Surely if you tried something like that you'd fail. Presumably the calculation is rarely explicit. Few people consciously decide not to try do the great work, but that's what's going on subconsciously. They shy away from the question. So I am going to pull a sneaky trick on you. Do you want to do great work or not? Now you have to decide consciously. Sorry about that. I wouldn't have done it if to a general audience, but we already know you're interested. So, do you want to great work? Do you want to do great work or not? Now you have to decide consciously. So, I have to do that. Don't worry about being presumptuous. You don't have to tell anybody. If it's too hard, you fail. So what? Lots of people have worse problems than that. In fact, you'll be lucky this time. It's the worst problem you have. Ha ha ha. Damn. You have to work hard, but again, lots of people have to work hard. And if you're working on something you find very interesting, which you necessarily will, if you're working in the right path, the work will probably feel less burdensome than a lot of your peers. Cool. This goes into the X2. For ambitions, you need to work. It's almost like a medical condition. So someone who won't let you work either doesn't understand you or does and doesn't. Okay, it's working. But again, lots of people have worked hard, and sometimes you find it very interesting, which you necessarily will. If you're on the right path, the work will probably feel less burdensome than a lot of your peers. Have to work hard, and if you're working on something you find very interesting, which you necessarily will if you're on the right path. The work will probably feel your peers. In fact, you'll be lucky if it's the worst problem you have. Very interesting. Absolutely. Okay, it's working. Okay, let's do the notes. I don't think we could give precise definition of what counts as a great work. Doing great work means doing something important as well as you expand people's ideas of what's people. But there is no threshold for importance. It's a matter of degree, often hard to decide. It's the time anyway. So I'd rather be people focused on developing their interest rather than worrying about whether they are important or not. Just try to do something amazing or leave it to the future generations and say if you succeeded. A lot of stand-up comedy is based on noticing anomalies of everyday life. Did you ever notice the ideas that come from doing this is about non-trivial things, which may help even explain why people's reaction to a new idea is often half of laughing. The second qualifier is critical. If you're excited about something, most authority is discount, but you can't give a more precise explanation than they don't get it. You're starting to define this is all just useless, I guess. It is useful, but I don't want to learn this. I don't want to read this. Something that enables people to go around and reading it directly with their audience is probably a good idea. It may be helpful to always walk on the same road because, for instance, for thinking it feels like pay for me, but there is a historical and there is some historical evidence for it. So for thinking. Helpful always to walk. To go around interviews and engage directly with their audience will probably a good idea. Tomorrow we'll go for how to get new ideas. Need to read. These are all short ones. Okay, here we go. Things. Alright then, let's wrap it up. Thank you for watching.